Hey, in this bonus tutorial, we're going to look at the last of Live 12's new MIDI generators, which is Euclidean, which we're going to use to create an awesome bass line like this. Let's check it out. Before we start making bass lines, let's just go through some of the basics of Euclidean. And if you're watching this on YouTube rather than my MIDI Tools course, then apologies if I go through any of the controls a bit too quickly because we've seen these a bunch already on the course. But I will briefly mention them so you know what's going on. But obviously for more information, check out the MIDI Tools course. And I'm going to be starting off with this King Tato patch, which is a polysynth, because I want to be able to play multiple notes, and we can't do that with this FM Pluck Bass monophonic patch. Both of these are really great sounds, by the way, in the Live 12 library. So I'm going to start off just by deactivating the auto button. If you're totally new to this, by the way, this is a new section in the MIDI editor generators, or if you're looking in the other mode, then you can see them on the last tab there. And here we can use these generators to actually create patterns. Turning off auto means I can now adjust these controls without patterns updating automatically, which is certainly easier when you're teaching or less distracting. So we'll come back to these controls in a minute, but to start with, let's jump over to the voices option here. And here you can see the notes that Euclidean is going to be using to create patterns. And I want it to create notes in this octave. You can see I've folded away all of the notes outside of the scale, which is currently G sharp or A flat Dorian. And I want Euclidean to work with these 4 notes, 1, 2, 3, and 5. So unfortunately, unlike some of the other MIDI tools, you can't set these automatically by clicking on the keyboard or holding down Alt and clicking, or setting a range, which would be nice. The tool works in chromatic fashion, so it doesn't automatically jump to scale degrees either. So when I click and drag or click and use the keyboard arrows on any of these, you can see it just steps up chromatically. So I want to do these 4 notes, as I said. So we're going to go up to, or down rather, to G sharp, and then hold down Shift and go up to G sharp 2. And then the next one, A sharp 2. And then the next one, B2. And then we're just going to come up an octave on this last one, or 2 octaves, D sharp 3. So that's our 4 notes. And we'll start off, we'll leave velocities for now, come back to them later. And we'll start off with a very simple pattern so you can just get used to what the tool does. And I'm going to bring down the number of steps to 2 and the density setting to 1. And I'm going to keep it on 16ths. So this will now create a pattern that has 2 steps of 16th note value. So it's going to be these 2 steps here. We're looking at a bar. So it's going to create a pattern that's this long. And then because we're creating this within the whole bar here, within the whole bar long clip, it's just going to repeat that pattern over and over across the whole clip. So let's generate that. So there we have our 4 notes generated in our 2-step pattern where one of the notes is turned on. So the density means how many notes are turned on in your 2-step pattern. So incidentally, with the density setting of 2, we would have all of them turned on. Not so exciting. But let's go back to 1 for a sec. And what you've also got here is this rotation option. And what this means is if I click on any of these and then again either drag the mouse up and down or use the keyboard keys, it shifts whatever note I have selected forward or back. And although the number is going up a lot of times here, because we've only got 2 steps in the pattern, as you can see, it's only shifting the note between one and the other. So basically, whatever note you land on, you've got a 50% chance here of being here or here, if that makes sense. In fact, if I just turn on auto for a moment, you'll see when we do this, it's just going backwards and forwards, whatever number we're on with any of them. And the control that's really awesome and fun to play with here on Euclidean is the randomize button in the middle, which will then just randomize any of these values. But as you can see, once again, it's just shifting the notes to one or the other position in the pattern. But, you know, we've got 4 notes here, so that can create quite a few different patterns. Let's just have a listen. You get the idea. What'll make it more interesting now, though, is if I increase the steps value to something a little bit higher, like 3. So now we have 3/16 to play with. And this will also create a cross rhythm, which means instead of the pattern being completely aligned with the beats in the bar, you'll hear it kind of changing over time, which creates a very exciting sound with things like house and techno. So if I just play it with this house beat now, back to our clip. As you can hear, lots of different combinations where the timing is much more exciting. And if I increase it to 4, we are aligned with the beat once again, so the rhythm won't be quite as dynamic and exciting. Although it is falling on the syncopated or swing beats of the of each beat now, so it is interesting, but as you can hear, the pattern is repeating with the beats. So if we want to make it really exciting, let's maybe go to kind of 5 steps. So now we've got these 5/16 to work with. And right now we've still only got 1 note turned on. So as you can see, for example, the B here, we've only got it there, and then it doesn't sound until this one, 6/16 later, and so on. But if we increase the density to something like 2 or 3, maybe that's a bit busy. Let's go with 2. That's going to create a really kind of interesting pattern that has intervals in quite a few places. So it's a little bit busier. And also a really interesting timing because it's got this irregular number of steps. And if it's sounding a little bit too jarring, well, you can try a few different things. You could turn off this 2nd degree, so we just got 1, 3, and 5 now. Or you could bring down the velocity to sort of lessen the volume of some of these notes. So yeah, ability to turn any of the notes on and off there, and also adjust their velocity values to customize the pattern as you like. So yeah, I think that's quite a good intro to Euclidean so far. And let's go back to our bassline now. Jumping back over to FM Pluck Bass, then I've got this new empty MIDI clip here. And I've reset Euclidean by hitting the switch there, just so we can begin again. And I want to work with these notes from G-sharp naught for our bass, so it's in the right register. So come over to voices here, and I'll just turn off the other notes for a minute. I think we can just keep it on auto now. Notice, by the way, because the notes are set to these ones outside of the scale, now we've got some that have been introduced there. So if I just turn that off for a minute, and in fact, I'll just set it to the right note first, drag it down to, or up to G-sharp naught. Now I'll just refold to the scale. So we're looking at the right notes again. And it can be quite cool just to have a very simple pattern here in terms of pitches. So we could just keep it to our tonic, the first degree of our key, so G sharp. And we could also have G sharp. I find it much easier to use the arrows on the keyboard. G sharp 1. So you could have octaves here and just choose a sort of suitable number of steps. Like, again, we could go for 3 steps with just one of them on, for instance, and then create random patterns that way. Like so. It could also be cool, however, to, instead of having G sharp have a more interesting degree, but actually before we do that, let's just click here and come down an octave. So now we've got the exact same pitch, but I'm going to choose a lower velocity for this one. So maybe max velocity or close to it for the first one and just a lower velocity value there. I mean, that's what I love about these MIDI tools. You can kind of simplify them to get some really awesome results, much like with things like rhythm and even seed. When you reduce the parameters down to a more simplistic kind of state where you're working with fewer pitches and maybe only adjusting or randomizing one parameter like velocity, say, you can get some incredible results and try out lots of different ideas just repeatedly by generating over and over again. So yeah, tons of different grooves there, all just working with one pitch. So already this is a superb feature to have for creating one-note bass lines. Let's introduce another pitch though, and that's going to be the 7th, which obviously we can see from our clip here, the one before the tonic, again, an octave up. So it's F sharp 1. So let's just bring that in now, and maybe we won't have it quite so loud, something around there. And yeah, let's try that out. Bear in mind, by the way, that because we're working with a monophonic patch here, even though we've got 2 coinciding here, it won't play both of those. So we're never going to get intervals sounding, but just one note at a time. So yeah, it can be really fun to adjust the different controls whilst you're playing your clip, like the pitch, as you could hear at the end there. These are things that you can't actually automate right now within Live, although they're starting to introduce things like MIDI mapping. But if you want to kind of have a jam with these and record it, then just create a separate audio track and then set your MIDI track as the input for that audio track and just record in a new clip. It's a fun way of kind of jamming, but then, getting a recording afterwards that you can then add to your productions as a sort of longer, more evolving phrase, as I've shown earlier on the course a few times. So, yeah, let's just move on from this clip then with this nice kind of rapid pattern. I want to show you another example where we just get rid of these notes now. And we'll go for a larger number of steps now, like 16. So we've got all 16 steps in our bar now. And obviously we want it to be less sparse. So I'll increase the density now to something like 5. So yeah, so that's having five notes across the bar for each one of our pitches here. Yeah, so let's just hear how this sounds. Loads of great ideas there. Just to finish up then, I'm going to show you how you can create more of a sequence. So a 4-bar bass line where we get a nice fill at the end. And I'm going to introduce some of the other transformers and MIDI features and clip launching here to do that. So I've got this bass line here that was created with these settings. So we've got 16 steps in the pattern. So the whole bar, a density of 7, so quite high. And that's going to give you loads of different options to randomize through to try out a ton of different ideas. So this one's quite busy currently. And of course, we could have tried eighth notes, would have worked pretty well for bass lines of this nature as well. But what we can do with this pattern that has 16ths currently is we can just duplicate it down to a new clip. And in this one, I'm going to come into pitch and time here, and I'm going to extend out the notes to eighths, which is going to change the sound. Very different sound there. So I'm going to keep that as is as well. I'm going to duplicate. So we've got one on the clip below. And for this one, I'm going to come into our transformers and I'm going to go to chop. And with chop here, you get to slice up all of our notes. We've looked at this extensively on the course for loads of different sounds, including my Berlin chop lead, which I was really happy with. So for this one then, we're just going to come in and start editing the parameters here. So it slices up all of our different MIDI notes. So kind of a crazy sound, not necessarily suitable for bass lines in this kind of format. But if you start to introduce gaps, then it gets really fun. As we've seen earlier, parts is just the number of bits that you slice it up into. So without any gaps, you can see each note has turned into 3 slices. And with the gaps, you then lose the second 2. So you've only got the first one there. And yeah, you can turn them on and off with the switches there as well. But yeah, I kind of like the sound of that one. We'll just go with that for now. And to make this even more interesting, I'm going to come over to the rack, and we're going to adjust this FM amount. So now I've adjusted it, coming back into the clip and going to envelopes, and we can see it's there. So all I have to do is click on the curve, like so. To create this kind of nice fill. So yeah, that's all we need to do now to start creating our sequence. So we just come back over to the clip editor and into the clip section. No, I lie, into the launch section, sorry, where we have follow actions. If you're new to this, then apologies if this is a bit quick, but all you have to do is turn on follow action, and then it allows you to create actions which can be carried out after certain amounts of time. So all I have to do is unlink this and set it to 3. So that way, after 3 bars, it will carry out the action, which in this case is set to just this side here. So it's going to do whatever's in this option, and it's set to next right now. So it'll mean it'll play the next clip down after 3 bars. And then for this one, we only want it to play once. So we turn on follow action and we set the action to previous. So it will then play the one above after 1 bar. So that's fine. Don't need to change the amount of time there. There you go. Done the wrong 2, of course. So we actually wanted it to be on these 2. Still sounds good like that, but let's set it here and then previous there. Cool. There you go. That's all the tips I'm going to show in this session. I hope you've enjoyed them. And as with all of the tutorials on the course, I kind of expand them out to show other areas of live as well, just to show them in context and in useful sound design examples for all sorts of different musical parts in your production. So yeah, hope you found this one useful, and check out the course if you want lots more tips on these MIDI tools, which I highly rate. So I fully recommend you check them out and get to know them as well as possible, because they're going to really transform no pun intended, your production skills. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.